There's room. Come closer, come in. My virtual tea party can now begin. Hello out there. I'm the Hatter. And I'm a glad Hatter because I'm happy that you joined my tea party. Look, I've got my teacups all set out for you. Let's drink some tea together. I'm going to grab my teacup. And if you don't have one, just make a teacup with your hand, like this. On the count of 3, we'll say cheers, and then drink our tea at the same time. Ready? Let's count to 3. 1, 2, 3. Cheers! Oh, too hot, too hot. Gotta cool it down first. Peanut butter, banana, fana, fofana flavored tea. My favorite. But now, it's time for today's tea time activity. You want to know something I've started to read and listen to? Poetry. Poetry. Poetry is a type of literature that puts words together in a special order. A lot of times with unique styles and rhythms. And when you read them, they can tap into or stir your imagination or feelings. There's a lot of different types of poetry, like narrative poetry. Narrative poetry tells a story, just like the stories you read in your books. There's a narrative poem that I know. It's called The Walrus and the Carpenter. It was written by Lewis Carroll in one of his books called Through the Looking Glass and What Alice Found There. Mr. Carroll and I know each other, you know. He even put me in one of his books. But anyway, The Walrus and the Carpenter poem tells a short story. And since it's dramatic, like me, I'm going to speak and show it to you in a puppet show. See? I've got my table setting here that will show where the poem takes place. And my helping hand will be holding up the puppets and some props to help show you what's happening. And now, the Hatter presents The Walrus and the Carpenter. The sun was shining on the sea, shining with all his might. He did his very best to make the billows smooth and bright. And this was odd because it was the middle of the night. The moon was shining sulkily because she thought the sun had got no business to be there after the day was done. It's very rude of him, she said, to come and spoil the fun. The sea was wet as wet could be. The sands were dry as dry. You could not see a cloud because no cloud was in the sky. No birds were flying overhead. There were no birds to fly. The Walrus and the Carpenter were walking close at hand. They wept like anything to see such quantities of sand. If this were only cleared away, they said, it would be grand. If 7 maids with 7 mops swept it for half a year, do you suppose, the Walrus said, that they could get it clear? I doubt it, said the Carpenter, and shed a bitter tear. Oh, oysters, come and walk with us, the Walrus did beseech. A pleasant walk, a pleasant talk, along the briny beach. We cannot do with more than 4 to give a hand to each. The eldest oyster looked at him, and never a word he said. The eldest oyster winked his eye and shook his heavy head, meaning to say he did not choose to leave the oyster bed. But 4 young oysters hurried up, all eager for the treat. Their coats were brushed, their faces washed, their shoes were clean and neat. And this was odd because, they hadn't any feet. 4 other oysters followed them, and yet another 4. And thick and fast they came at last, and more and more and more, all hopping through the frothy waves and scrambling to the shore. The Walrus and the Carpenter walked on a mile or so, and then they rested on a rock, conveniently low. And all the little oysters stood and waited in a row. "The time has come," the Walrus said, "to talk of many things. Of shoes, and ships, and sealing wax, of cabbages, and kings, and why the sea is boiling hot, and whether pigs have wings." "But wait a bit," the oysters cried, "before we have our chat, for some of us are out of breath, and all of us are fat." "No hurry," said the Carpenter. They thanked him much for that. "A loaf of bread," the Walrus said, "is what we chiefly need. Pepper and vinegar besides are very good indeed. Now, if you're ready, oysters dear, we can begin to feed." "But not on us," the oysters cried, turning a little blue. "After such kindness, that would be a dismal thing to do." The night is fine," the Walrus said. "Do you admire the view? It was so kind of you to come, and you are very nice." The Carpenter said nothing, but cut us another slice. "I wish you were not quite so deaf. I had to ask you twice." "It seems a shame," the Walrus said, "to play them such a trick, after we've brought them out so far and made them trot so quick." The Carpenter said nothing, but the butter spread too thick. "I weep for you," the Walrus said. "I deeply sympathize." With sobs and tears, he sorted out those of the largest size, holding his pocket handkerchief before his streaming eyes. "Oh, oysters," said the Carpenter, "you've had a pleasant run. Shall we be trotting home again?" But answer came there none. And this was scarcely odd because they'd eaten everyone. Ta-da! So, what did you think about the Walrus and the Carpenter? How did the poem make you feel? Especially that ending. Ooh. One of the best things about poetry is that a lot of them have different meanings, and you can think about or interpret them in many ways. Talk with your family and friends at home about what this poem means to you. Or you can find some other poems to read and act out. Poetry, poetry, poetry. Give it a try. Clean cup, clean cup. That means it's time to go. Thanks for stopping by my virtual tea party. Let's give one more cheer. Grab or make your teacup with your hands. On the count of 3. 1, 2, 3. Cheers!